You're listening to Fire Ecology Chats, a podcast series by the Association for Fire Ecology.
Hello everyone, Bob Keane here again with another Fire Ecology Chats, and today we're going to be talking about an incredibly important paper, one that I enjoyed reading immensely. The title of the paper is Overstory Retention in a Managed Mixed-Conifer Stand Limits Cheatgrass Invasion After Wildfire, and we got three of the authors here to talk about it. We got Joe, Jessica, and Matt. You want to introduce yourself? Joe, you first.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Birch. I'm currently a postdoc working out of Dr. Jessica Miesel's lab at the University of Idaho.
And Jessica?
I'm Jessica Miesel. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Forest, Rangeland, and Fire Sciences at the University of Idaho.
And Matt, go ahead.
I'm a research ecologist with the Northern Research Station of the Forest Service.
I want to welcome all of you to this wonderful podcast to talk about this paper. I appreciate your time. This paper is kind of important to me, or, it's probably important to other people too. Joe, can you go ahead and say a little about the paper?
Sure. So this paper is actually kind of a continuation in a series of work we've been doing at this site. So this is a site that exists in mixed conifer forests in the Southern Sierra. And back in 2005, there was a study done at the site to implement a lot of silvicultural treatments to manage fuels and then look at the long-term effects. And we've been coming back at kind of mixed intervals over the last 20-something years to look at the effects of those treatments over the long term. So what is going on with the fuels, the understory composition, and the overstory. Now, serendipitously, for us at least, a wildfire burned across the study site in 2021. And so now we had the opportunity to look at treatment and wildfire interactions. And so that's what led to us going out and remeasuring this site after the wildfire. And while we were initially interested primarily in the effects on the overstory and on fuels, what we found when we got out there was some pretty dramatic effects from cheatgrass. So cheatgrass had really invaded a lot of the site. And we found some pretty interesting differences between the treatments in their long-term abilities to kind of mitigate some of those cheatgrass impacts, in addition to, of course, moderating wildfire effects and fuel accumulation.
This paper, of course, is published in Fire Ecology, and Fire Ecology is an international journal that's published by Springer, but managed by the Association for Fire Ecology. And Jessica Miesel was a very important part of AFI and the establishment of the journal and so on. And so we're very excited to have her on. Jessica, can you tell us a little about the methods of the study?
Sure. This is a field-based study. And like Joe mentioned, this is part of a series of measurements we've been conducting at the site that is based in partnership with the Fire Behavior Assessment Team, which Matt Dickinson leads. And Allie Reiner was an author on an earlier paper from the study site. And the good work that they did and the documentation they did of their sites really set us up to be able to do this study. So as part of funding from CAL FIRE, we remeasured a lot of the Fire Behavior Assessment Team plots in 2021. And it just so happened that after Joe and the field crew he was leading remeasured this study site in 2021, the 2021 French fire happened. So then through JFSP funding, we were able to go back in 2024 and get the post-fire remeasurement. So it's a really unique study site. We've used consistent field methods throughout all of these measurements, so it allows a good ability to evaluate change over time. Even though with this paper, we're really focused on one of the 4 blocks that were set up at this Red Mountain study site. So it consists of field plots where we measure overstory composition, fuel loads for each of the strata of fuels in the forest, and then we calculate the biomass from those field-based methods.
Yeah, well, just giddy with excitement here. Joe, can you give us a little taste of what the results are?
Sure. So the wildfire had burned across 2 types of treatments. So one was a control that had never been treated for fuel management back in 2005. So essentially it had just been operating as a background condition this entire time. And the fire also burned across an area that had been treated with a mastication, a pullback of surface fuels, and then a prescribed fire. And so these are the 2 areas where we were comparing an area that had been prescribed burned back in 2007 and then a control. What we saw was that the areas that had been treated by prescribed fire, even though that had been 13 years prior, that had much lower wildfire effects, much greater overstory survival. And then what we found was we had a fairly limited sample size, so it was a bit difficult to identify statistical significance, but there was a clear pattern that cheatgrass was much more abundant in the controls that had never been treated, and that cheatgrass was really responding to the death of the overstory. The more overstory canopy that was retained, the the lower the cheatgrass cover and biomass. And what was really striking to us is this longitudinal data set we had going back to 2005. Back then, there was no cheatgrass present at these sites. And then in 2024, when we did our post-fire remeasurements, cheatgrass had 100% cover across the sites that were controls. So we'd gone from no cheatgrass to almost no native species present and just the most vigorous, happy cheatgrass I've ever seen in my life. But the silver lining here is that the treatments, even though they've been implemented for fuel management and to reduce wildfire effects, were still having an effect that many years later. But not only were they reducing fuels and reducing the effects of the wildfire, they had this secondary effect of also mitigating the cheatgrass invasion in the stands.
Yeah, I hate that cheatgrass. Well, exciting results usually lead to exciting management implications. And Matt, you're up. Do you want to talk about what the implications of this study are to management and other research activities?
Yeah, what stands out at me is clearly the treatments were effective, prescribed fire and some thinning related to the mastication, and in retaining overstory. Once you lose that overstory and you get these cheatgrass invasions after fire, it seems like the one thing that would be important to focus on is trying to get that canopy cover back, which may be shepherding existing regen that's coming in or planting potentially in these sites to try to get the overstory back. Otherwise, it's unclear to me how you can diminish this cheatgrass invasion.
Well, I want to thank you three for coming on and sharing the results and all the aspects of the study. I'm hoping people will download it. Jessica, do you want to recognize any co-authors or funding agencies?
I want to thank Ali Reiner and Carol Ewell and all the folks that were involved in the early FBAT teams that really created the opportunity for this project. Kelly Batista is another co-author on this paper, and the funding was provided by the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, or CAL FIRE, as part of the California Climate Investments Program, and our 2024 field season was supported by the Joint Fire Science Program.
Well, thanks again, all of you. I really appreciate it. If this interested anyone in the audience, hey, guess what? You can download it for free. Yeah, for free, because Fire Ecology is an open source journal. And guess what? These guys, Joseph, Jessica, and Matt, they already paid the freight for you to go ahead and download it. So please download this paper and enjoy this paper. Believe me, they left a lot of meat on the bone here, and there's a lot more results that are covered in the paper. So with that, please tune in again for the next Fire Ecology Chats.
Thank you for listening to Fire Ecology Chats, a podcast series by the Association for Fire Ecology. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to our show and leave us a review. To learn more about fire ecology and support our future work by becoming a member, visit fireecology.org. FIREECOLOGY.org.